The next day, I headed to the vice president's office to confront Eloise. However, she was not there. I peeked into the president's office and saw Eloise sitting in the president's chair looking at me.
What was that all about yesterday? Falsely accusing me is going too far. Thanks to that, the other employees are avoiding me now too.
Then Eloise snorted, stared at me for a while, then let out an exaggerated sigh.
Who are you? Let's fire you. What?
I let out a surprised, odd-sounding voice. Then Eloise started saying she didn't know me and asking what I was thinking, sneaking into the company when I wasn't an employee. Eloise's outrageous attitude made me feel anger bubbling up from the pit of my stomach.
Cut it out already. What are you trying to do? Scary. I'll have to call everyone again for help. Please listen to me seriously. Don't yell at me. I don't know you. Even if I did, you've been fired, so can you please hurry up and leave the company?
Eloise laughed with a smirk, and I got angry and decided to accept her story. Either way, a company that considers someone like her as a president is not a decent company. I've been with them for a long time, but I never thought I'd end up leaving like this. And Eloise will experience firsthand what happens when I leave the company.
This company is done for.
With a feeling of resignation, I gathered my belongings and quickly left the company. Then I made a phone call to a certain place. A few days later, I received a call from Nate on my cell phone. By that time, I had already changed jobs, so I reluctantly answered the phone.
Why did you quit the company?
Nate said in a panicked tone and begged me to give him some time because he wanted to talk right away. I accepted Nate's request and told him I would wait at a designated location. Nate heard the name of the place, gasped in surprise. Then a few hours later, Nate showed up at the company I now work for, along with Eloise. It was Nate's company's rival. I had joined the rival company immediately after the incident with Eloise. Originally, they had approached me before, but I kept declining. But after being unfairly fired from the company and feeling angry, I made an appointment with this company. The president of the rival company listened to my story and accepted me right away. Furthermore, he announced that he had headhunted me and decided to give me a position as well. I was surprised that they went that far for me, but they said I was a talent they didn't want to let go, and my simple self was honestly happy and determined to do my best at this company going forward. And along with me, several employees also joined this rival company. The employees who joined with me all said they couldn't keep up if Eloise became the next president and that they would follow me. I was a bit troubled, but since the employees who gathered were all excellent talents, I told the president of the rival company that they wouldn't be a loss and decided to have them hired as well. I was impressed by the generosity of the rival company's president. When I told that story, Nate turned pale and his body trembled. However, Eloise didn't take the situation seriously and glared at me with a snobby face.
We don't need traitors anymore. Dad, now that we know the situation, let's hurry up and go home.
Eloise said that and gave me a cold look, but Nate, who was sitting next to her, raised his eyes and scolded Eloise.
Doing whatever you want. Are you trying to ruin my company? Is there a problem? Sure, it's infuriating that the other employees are taken. But even if we're short on talent, we can just fill in the gaps with new hires, right? Don't mess around. You don't understand anything. And when did I ever say I would make you president? Huh? I'm your daughter, you know? It's only natural that I'll become president after you retire. Plus, I'll eventually inherit your estate and company, right?
Eloise said that and looked at Nate with her chest puffed out. However, Nate scolded her, telling her not to say such foolish things.
Even if the inheritance is passed to you, I won't give you the company. In the first place, there's no way I would consider handing over the company to someone who doesn't even know what my company does. I've already appointed Marjorie as the next president. What? But she's not a relative, right? Why would you give the company to an outsider? That's ridiculous. What are you saying? Even if they're not a relative, they have the right to become president. And it's not just simply handing over the company. I was going to take on the role of chairman and have her be the president.
Hearing the president's words, Eloise was dumbfounded. Apparently, she had mistakenly believed that only relatives had the right to inherit the company. The president said in an exasperated tone that there was no way she could handle being president when she had never even worked before.
So what if I don't know? I can just learn from now on, right? In the first place, the company won't go under just because this ordinary female employee is gone. To make up for her absence, we can just hire other people to fill in. You really don't know anything, do you? If you wanted to be president, I thought you would at least check the sales a little. In the first place, Marjorie is responsible for nearly 90% of the company's sales. So if she's gone, the company will quickly decline. Even if it doesn't go under, our earnings will drop significantly and our foundation will become fragile. What? This plain-looking middle-aged woman brings in that much sales.
Eloise turned a surprised face towards me. She was making a face that practically demanded an explanation, so I briefly talked about my work. Then Eloise screamed that she couldn't do so many things at once, so I had to come back and teach her from square one. I sighed and told her that since I was suddenly fired, I couldn't properly hand things over, so she would struggle from now on and to do her best on her own.
Don't mess with me. Quit this company right now and hurry up and come back. Once you're done teaching me everything, I won't need you anymore, so fulfill your duties until then. You're being way too irresponsible.
I didn't want to quit either.
But you're the one who forced me to resign, right? And then, adding insult to injury, you falsely accused me and told me to never come near the company again, right? Who's the irresponsible one?
Eloise tried to argue after hearing my words, but Nate cut her off and yelled. Eloise was startled by his voice, flinched in fear, and then sulked and hung her head. Glaring sideways at Eloise, the president begged me.
I'll never let this kind of mistake happen again. I won't let my daughter get involved with the company. So please, won't you come back? I'll give you the same position here that you were given there, and I'll pay you more than that company, so please reconsider.
Nate bowed his head so deeply it looked like he would hit the desk. Eloise was also restrained by Nate and made to bow deeply. I told Nate with furrowed brows.
I'm sorry, but I was accepted by this company and even given an important position. On top of that, they also accepted the employees who followed me. I can't repay that kindness with betrayal. So I won't go back.
Hearing those words, Nate hung his head with a desperate look on his face. Eloise finally seemed to understand the gravity of the situation and started crying, saying she would never do this again and asking for forgiveness for her past behavior. I clearly told her that I still wouldn't go back. In the first place, they were the ones who treated me horribly, so I told Nate to make sure Eloise took responsibility. Hearing those words, Nate forgot all reason and yelled at Eloise. Eloise turned pale at the terrifying sight and wailed like a child, apologizing. Still, Nate must have been in great shock, as he kept blaming Eloise with tears streaming down his face.
How do you plan to take responsibility for doing this?
Scolded by Nate, Eloise offered to work to make up for it. However, Nate wouldn't allow it.
You're not my daughter anymore. I'm disowning you. I never want to see your face again. Dad, not that. I've never worked before. I can't live on my own.
Eloise clung to Nate with tears in her eyes, but Nate shook off his daughter and scolded her with bloodshot eyes.
No, I won't forgive you. Do you really understand the gravity of what you've done? It's not a loss that you can recover from overnight. You ruined the company I've dedicated my life to and trampled on our efforts. Running a company means supporting the livelihoods of all the employees. And in just a few days, you've ruined the lives of hundreds of employees, including me. There's something wrong with you.
At Nate's words, Eloise fell to her knees, dumbfounded and frozen. Still unable to give up, Eloise turned her eyes to me, as if clinging to me. But I must have been looking at Eloise with the same cold eyes as Nate. As if to escape that gaze, Eloise quickly averted her eyes.
It will cause trouble for the company if you make a scene, so please take your leave now.
I told the two of them in an exasperated tone. Hearing my words, they quietly left the company. Afterwards, it seems Eloise was truly disowned. All the brand name goods and accessories she had bought with Nate's earnings were confiscated, and she was even kicked out of the house. It must be very difficult for her to live under the harsh scrutiny of society, having never worked before and never struggled with money. According to rumors I heard through the grapevine, she's apparently using a rundown apartment as a base and working day and night, juggling a supermarket and factory job. Meanwhile, Nate is doing his best to get the company back on track. He had said he planned to retire as president soon, but thanks to Eloise ruining that plan, it's been pushed back a bit. Thanks to Nate's desperate efforts, sales have dropped, but it seems the employees have been spared from being out on the streets. As for me, I've regained a peaceful life, working at my new company every day. Actually, I'm married, but my husband and I have been living separately for a long time. It's not that we were living apart because we had a bad relationship, but to respect each other's lives. But just the other day, we decided to live together. My husband brought up the idea of living together. When I asked him why, he shyly told me that his work was settling down, so he wanted to try living as a married couple with me. Of course, I agreed. We immediately moved into a house where we could live together, and on weekends we go to the movies and out to eat, living a fulfilling life.
My husband, Charles, tells me he's going to marry the woman he's been seeing and asks for a divorce. Let's not waste time with property division, just leave quickly. Sharon taunts me, as if she's relishing in my misery. Donald, too, is infatuated with a woman he met at a bar. They don't want to live with me. I'll leave, just as you wish. But before that, I'll give you a piece of my mind. My name is Joy Lynn. Named with the hope of being blessed with much joy, Joy and Joy Lynn, I am a 50-year-old woman whose life hasn't been as joyful as I'd hoped. But now my days are filled with happiness, so I can look back and laugh at the past. Let me take you back to when I was 35. I was about to celebrate my 10th wedding anniversary with Charles. We hadn't been blessed with children, and I found it somewhat painful to hear comments from those around us like, "Do you have any kids?" and "Children are wonderful, you know." Conversations with Charles had dwindled, partly because he had been promoted a few years earlier, became busier with work, and traveled frequently. I was working too, so we hardly saw each other. No wonder we didn't have children. Well, this too is a form of marriage, and it's easier on our minds. Having children or not, it doesn't matter. That's what I thought. One day, our family grew in a way we hadn't expected. It wasn't an angelic baby that arrived. Instead, it was a parents-in-law that seemed like a demon from hell. Apparently, right after we got married, the parents-in-law had been constantly telling Charles that they wanted to live with us. Charles weighed the hassle of living together against the hassle of continually refusing. As a result, he decided that living together would be less of a hassle. Surprisingly rational, or not? Hey, I didn't agree to live together. According to Charles, I'm hardly ever home, so it's fine. It might be fine for you. But still, as Charles said, it's fine. If the parents-in-law are good people. I had a hard time with these parents-in-law even before we started living together. They were the ones who persistently asked me, "When are you having kids?" Sharon would always say, "The more children you have, the better," every time we met. But you only gave birth to Charles, right? Living with such parents-in-law, it's a stomach-churning story. I wonder how living together will turn out. My expectations were quickly betrayed. Not in a good way. It turned out even worse than I thought. Donald solemnly declared as we started living together, "We won't give you any pension or living expenses." Then Sharon continued with a smile, "Let's go with that arrangement." Wait, what kind of arrangement is that? Charles also said something like, "We both work, so we can manage without receiving living expenses." So Charles is one of them, too. I had never been particularly dissatisfied with Charles until now.
I didn't expect much from a husband even before we got married. I thought a husband who doesn't get angry easily and works hard was good enough. But now, a wave of complaints that I never had before came rushing in. Moreover, as I lived with the parents-in-law for a while, I gradually understood the real reason they wanted to live with us. Donald would often go out somewhere at night. I believed him when he said he was going out to drink with friends. But then, I found a point card from what you'd call a nightclub and a business card with Nancy written on it in the laundry. There are various types of bars, but this was clearly a service industry that directly satisfies a man's desires. I see, he likes Nancy. I can't believe he's still so energetic at his age, I thought. Of course, I meant it in a bad way. No wonder he can't give us living expenses, he's spending it on Nancy. It can't be helped. No way. On the other hand, Sharon gradually started to harass me. Moreover, she was cunning and intensified the harassment gradually, so much so that even I didn't notice at first. At first, I thought she was being kind. I could have endured it if it had just been about the way I fold laundry or season my cooking, but there were times when Sharon called me by the name of Charles's ex-girlfriend. Every time, Sharon would apologize, saying, "I remember her strongly because she was the first girlfriend Charles introduced me to. I didn't do it on purpose. I'm sorry." At first, I thought, Sharon is old, so maybe such things happen. But as it continued, I realized something was off. Speaking of which, every time I took a shower, the bathroom was always dirty. I initially thought the mess in the bathroom was from Charles and the others who had gone in before, but no one complained about the bathroom being dirty. So, without a doubt, it must have been Sharon who was in before me. There were other instances too, like when Sharon, mistakenly thinking everyone had already bathed on a snowy day, unplugged the bathtub, leaving me to shower in the freezing cold. She also once took my favorite necklace from the closet without asking and then lost it. Each time, Sharon would say, "I didn't do it on purpose. I just wasn't thinking. I'm sorry." While it's possible to accidentally shower or call someone by the wrong name, taking jewelry without permission is not something that can be brushed off as a mere oversight. I began to suspect that maybe this was all intentional harassment aimed at me. When I saw Sharon angrily sitting at the dining table saying, "My dinner is late because Joylyn came home late," I finally realized it was indeed harassment, albeit subtle. Come to think of it, Sharon hasn't done any housework since she came to our home. She throws her socks inside out into the laundry and tosses bottles into the trash without removing the labels, adding minor inconveniences every time. She complains if meals are late and if the sheets are messy, and sometimes she even throws things. I finally understood. Our home was indeed graced by the arrival of a baby. 2 of them, in fact, both big and delightfully stubborn. Exhausted from my job as a caregiver, all I wanted was to quickly escape this situation and go to bed, so I kept silently tolerating Sharon's behavior. I didn't have the energy to argue with anyone when I returned home. I wanted to rest as quickly as possible, even if it was just for a moment. While I was exhausted and didn't notice at first, it seemed that Sharon knew about Donald's night outings. When an actress appeared on TV, Sharon persistently asked Donald, "Donald, don't you like girls like her?" "You do, don't you?" The actress's name was Nancy. The same as the girl from the bar. Donald looked pale. After that incident, I asked Sharon once, "Are you okay with Donald going out like that?" Sharon replied, "If I get a divorce, I'll be someone who has a divorce history at this age, right? That's miserable, and it looks bad to society. Of course, I don't like it. But he's just playing with professionals at the bar, right?
If he's not serious, I can accept it.
She wasn't holding back from divorce because of her concern for Donald, but rather she feared becoming someone with a history of divorce. I couldn't understand